welcome to the show, Jack Leeuw. Thanks for coming on board.
Oh, thank you. Thanks.
Cool. So, yeah, we're here with Jack Leeuw, a good friend of mine from the gym that I work at, and an interesting guy. So, Jack, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? What's your history? Where are you from? Like, who is Jack Leeuw?
Who's Jack Leeuw?
Yeah.
My long history is, I come from Adelaide, so don't hold that against me.
Wow, yeah, it's a bad start.
We'll take
that bit out later.
But, no, I've been in Melbourne about 12 years. Oh, no, a bit longer than that. 15 years. And I've been in banking for a long time. I'm originally an accountant, went into risk management during the GFC, so I thought that would be a good time to get into risk, which it was. I learned a lot out of that.
Yeah.
And the last few years I've been really moving out of that into consulting, and particularly into wellbeing and leadership. So I do a lot of work in leadership and wellbeing, which has been an interest of mine. And as I got older, I probably was less interested in the technical stuff, more interested in people, and also my own experience with probably burnout and big corporate and how that felt, and thinking, actually it doesn't need to be like that, because I did my own research and had to, fix myself, as opposed to, I probably could have gone to a doctor or someone to help, but they probably
wouldn't have fixed you.
I might not have fixed me anyway, and I did my own work. And then since then, people ask me about it, and then I thought, actually, there's a gap in the market here, and I think I've got something to offer, and that's what I've been doing. My wife's a very senior executive in ASX top 50 company. Although, it's always hard to know if they're top 50 or top 100 because the market keeps moving around.
Yeah.
But, she's very...
Fancy company.
Yeah, that's right,
Yeah.
And she travels a lot, and she's kind of a good example of someone who probably suffers some of the things at the pace they go under. But she's, a super capable person, so it doesn't really bother her much.
Yeah.
We got 2 kids, so we've got a daughter who's just going through her year 12 exams right now.
Cool.
She's kind of feeling the stress, but she's a bit like me. She's probably super relaxed and
you're pretty
calm.
chill,
So it's hard to know on the inside what's going on, but she seems,
got a good facade at least.
Super prepared, right? And I got a 9-year-old boy who's just like full, a lot of energy. He's nothing like me. He's got much more, out there and extroverted.
Cool. All right, no worries. So, what brought you to Melbourne in the first place?
Banking.
Yep.
Yeah.
You got a role over here.
Yeah. I was working in the public sector in South Australia. I was a chief finance officer at WorkCover there for a while.
Yep.
And then I thought, I want to go into banking, and I don't really know.
You're a bit of a weirdo, eh?
It sounds like sexy, but this is a long time. Banking was pretty sexy back then.
Was it really?
There weren't
Jesus,
people.
another time.
People weren't kind of just dismissing it all the time.
Yeah.
And it was a great move, and it was a really interesting company to work for. I did so many different things there, and I worked with some super leaders, which is where I learned a lot about my own leadership skills, but how really, top A grade leaders operate, and was really, really interesting. But it was a real big difference from being in the public sector.
Yeah, for sure.
Because public sector was all about, what can we do for other people, and the private sector was, what can we do for ourselves?
That's a good way to explain it.
And that's not a bad thing. So, that's just different. So it's not good or bad, it's just different. And, had its own advantages, because for once I only had to focus on one thing, which is how to make as much money for the shareholders as possible.
Yeah.
Whereas in the public sector, we had, I worked in a business that had a 9-stakeholder board, and effectively nobody was ever happy, ever.
Yep.
And that was quite stressful, but in a different way.
Okay, cool. So how long did you spend basically from starting your career to, how long did you spend in the corporate world, would you say?
Oh, well, as I give my age away, probably about 25 years.
25 years.
25, 25 to 28 years.
Yeah.
Doing different things,
Yeah, and then what was the catalyst to actually, I know you might have briefly mentioned it in your introduction to yourself, but what was the catalyst to going, all right, cool, I see that there's a market here, I want to get out and I want to do my own thing and I want to help people in, whether it be, we obviously started getting to know each other and talking heavily, which was around leadership, which I'm very I'm obsessed by it, to be perfectly honest, because I'm in that role.
Yeah.
And then obviously the wellness stuff. But like, what was the catalyst to have you, make that move and try and help other people rather than stay in the, corporate world?
Yeah, two things. One is, I think in the corporate world, one of my great strengths, other than just the technical, was actually leading teams. Mm-hmm. And quite often I'd been given teams that probably weren't functioning to their best, and really working with them, getting them really engaged and really using the skills in the team, because I always believe that people have got far more potential than they even believe in.
Yeah.
And that kind of thought was just always stretching everybody, and myself. And I always love working with people who want to keep stretching me as well. Yeah. So I really enjoyed that leadership aspect, learnt a lot about how to do leadership, because I was a bit like you, I was obsessed with it, because I knew that was the kind of key to success, really. Yeah. Working with people and working through people. Yeah. And so I spent a lot of time learning about that and understanding that, and reading it, talking to leaders, what they do, and then using probably some of my teams are probably guinea pigs on a few expeditions about what different things we were doing. Sure. But then I had a real burnout in my career, and so a lot of people talk about burnout, but for me it was really quite terrible, because I had started to lose my memory.
Really?
Yeah. So it was really bad. So it was, and I had a role that was really reliant on people would walk up and say, "Jack, how much lending have we got in home loans in Victoria?" Yep. And you go. And I used to be able to.
Where's Victoria?
I used to just be able to. I used to be able to go. Oh, we've got this, we got that, and we got that. And then I was like, I'm not actually sure anymore. And so that's really quite confidence destroying. Oh yeah. And had a reasonable profile role at different times of the year. So particularly in the annual reporting cycle. Yep. I would sit with the CFO and that, and. It's, you could see people starting to look at me and like, oh, what's going on? So that was terrible. And
so that was because I've been in that position before, where I feel like when I'm really anxious, I get anxious and stressed and depressive bits and pieces, whatever. Yeah. But I've often said that, and I think studies have shown. I saw an article about it just the other day on short-term memory loss through anxiety, and because I feel like I remember my brother and I were driving through the United States, and we were driving from LA to Las Vegas. Yep. And doing this road trip, we're driving past all this really cool stuff, and there was a funny bit of graffiti on a street sign or on a mural, and I don't remember what it was, and I didn't pick up what it was. So basically, my brother goes, "Oh, look at that, bro," and pointed over, and I was like, "What? Where?" Because I was at this point in time, I was so unfathomably anxious and stressed, and my brother looked at me and he was like, "What's
the matter, right, mate?" You're kind of more in your head than anywhere else.
I couldn't. He pointed to a sign, a funny sign, and obviously right now I'd be like, "Oh, that's great," But I swear, like my IQ drops 20, 30 points when I'm in that mode, Not so much memory, but IQ. My brain is just it's overworked.
It's harder because you got that. If you think about it, it's that fight, flight, or freeze. Yeah. And a lot of people just freeze, which is the reduction in IQ.
Yeah, that's right. And people don't talk about the freeze.
No, everyone talks about fight or flight. Yeah. But there's a lot of freeze goes on. Because if you think about corporate environments and work environment, if you whatever you're doing really, but particularly in corporate environments, you're sitting around a table, and if you're feeling like you actually want to get out of there, the only thing you can do then is freeze. Yeah. And you can actually see people do that around the table. But at this, I was talking about that time, I was kind of like me. I would be, my wife always says my best offense is a good defense. Yep. Or my best defense is a good offense. Yes. Which I really go, if I'm cornered, I'll go.
Yeah, right. I wouldn't pick you for that.
No, that's right. But, so maybe in an understated way.
Yeah.
But
How many loans have we got in Victoria at the moment, Jack?
How many fucking loans have you got in Victoria, mate?
Something like that.
No, it was probably more like, what, don't you know?
Yeah. Why don't you tell me?
What, don't you know?
Yeah,
shouldn't you know this? Or they're like, well, hang on.
Shifting the blame. Just a real buck passer.
That's right, yeah. It's corporate Australia. No, but that would be one of but I would get the more freeze, and that would be inappropriate for the time. And that was interesting, but it is was a lot of stuff going on for me personally and professionally at the time.
Yeah.
And I think it just wore me down. And, there are long hours and there's lots of stress in those roles. And so that kind of got me to, how do I fix that?
Yeah.
And I think I was a little bit embarrassed to actually go and ask someone for help.
Yeah.
And so I do what I normally do. I go read up on it.
Yep.
And look up stuff and try stuff out. I go, well, I'm going to try that. I'm going to try. Oh, maybe I can meditate. I'll try that.
Really?
And I should sleep more.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. I'll just go sleep more.
Yeah.
Or sleep in a better way. And
with your eyes closed.
Yeah, with the eyes closed.
I've been fucking staring at the ceiling this whole time.
or not reading my email from work just before I'm about to go to sleep.
Yeah, for sure.
And go, because there's always something terrible.
Yeah.
But nothing you can do anything about
blue light.
That's right, and the blue lights and all that stuff. And I just kind of started working on that. And then kind of the food I was eating and then kind of changing that. And that over time that made a difference. And I kind of was getting to the end of my corporate career anyway.
Yeah.
Because I was getting to do I want to keep doing this or do I want something else? And I really got to that. And I thought, the one area which I really love is helping people, because I think one of the things I always did was really good getting the most out of everyone.
Yep.
I think, well, could I pass some of this on? I see people are doing well-being stuff, but I don't think they're doing it in the way that I want to do it, which is all about performance. Because at the end of the day, it wasn't about just feeling good for the sake of feeling good, which is a good end, I guess. But it was about really more a sports view.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to be well. We're going to keep our team well, but we're going to do that because we want to
be excellent.
Win the premiership.
Yeah, for sure. It's
like
a sports psychologist for business, like a business psychologist.
So it was that view, and that's the view that I'm really working on, is how do we get better at what we do, as opposed to just bean bags and fruit boxes at the front counter for people.
Yeah, right. That's interesting. We're very similarly aligned, Jack, I reckon. I'm very, very similar to you, where I find something that I want to improve on, and I go and read 7 books about it and become a human guinea pig, and I really love it. It's great, and I know things that work for me, and I know things that don't work so well. And things that work for me is sleep. I believe is huge for me, above meditation and above exercise, and the other thing that's big for I think big for me is being around people. I know the things that work for me through. I think I know things will change, and I might be wrong, but I'm very much a human guinea pig. Doing tests on myself, running tests on myself. I think it's great. Yeah. So okay, cool. So and then as far as all this stuff goes in relation to wellness and leadership and getting the most out of teams and so forth, where did it start? So you leave the corporate world and you're like,
what do I do now? What do I do now? Well, I kind of had a halfway house for a little while.
Yeah.
So I went to work for a PwC, one of the big consulting houses.
Yep.
And I did some work.
That's a halfway house.
That's
yeah, right.
Well, I was working part-time and I was continuing to do work on risk and banking.
Yep.
And then in the meantime, I was really building up what my offering was in the leadership wellbeing space. And I did that for probably 18 months to two years. And then at the end of last year, I really cut my ties with that and said, well, I'm going to not do that anymore. Which I really love the organisation, but they don't quite do that type of leadership wellbeing stuff.
Yep.
That's not their bread and butter. And I thought, well, I'll just start going out on my own and start building up programs and doing coaching. So we've run a couple of workshops this year around how to really improve your nutrition and some of your mindset work around being just a better performer and a better leader.
Yep.
And then really talking to a few companies at the moment just around how do we get a kind of broader wellbeing performance program in place.
Yep.
And I think there's a lot of interest in this area because I think companies do know through their engagement and other surveys that their people are,
disengaged.
Disengaged and struggling a little bit.
Yeah.
You talked about relationships. It's a really funny thing. We work in, a lot of people work in big organisations with people around them in pods and etc. and feel isolated.
Yeah.
Because they're just not engaging.
It's wild, isn't it?
Sometimes I think we've learnt we've kind of unlearnt those skills of engagement anyway, because we're kind of texting and instant messaging, but that's not the same as engaging.
Yeah, that's right, 100%.
Yeah.
I think that's interesting because last night, I think there's a huge market for it. Like you said, last night I went to a talk by the head of growth at Koala Mattresses. So they went from, a little bit of investment early days to now $150 million in revenue per year. Tim has since moved on to start his own venture capital-based, like brand building company. Long story. But anyway, one of the things that he talked about the fact that he's basically just a weapon content creator and digital marketer. Right. So the way that Koala won is they built a brand and they were better marketers than anyone else. They built a brand that people can love, and they, through crazy data, they were able to create consistently viral advertising campaigns. Yep. So, and the thing, excuse me, one of the things that Tim talked about was, he said, someone asked, like, how has the market changed in the last 3 years in terms of like digital advertising? And he's like, look, it costs us 40% more to get a customer through Facebook or through Google and so forth. So what we've had to do is we've had to up our lifetime value. So now we create, we sell couches and chairs and all these other bits and pieces. So cool, no worries. But the thing is, and what made me think of this specifically from last night, from what you said, was it's always in business, particularly in, the digital realm, when everyone's acquiring a customer through online channels, it's consistently getting harder and harder and harder to make a buck. Facebook people are priced out of Facebook advertising these days. Google is quite difficult. You have to be, pretty good on Google. You can build your own long form stuff, your SEO or whatever. But one thing that companies can do, which is hopefully where everything is going, is you don't have to create, a crazy advertising campaign. You don't have to spend a shitload of money on, Facebook. You don't have to build this and that and the other. You just have to have a happier team.
True.
That's going to perform better with the resources and the expenses and so forth inside of your company. If you can get a 3% increase in productivity through 10%, better general wellness across the board of your team, then you win there. And I think because people are a bit unhappy day to day, I think over across the board, like, the whole Monday-itis shouldn't be a thing. It should be, geez, I'm stoked. I get to go to work today.
To go do stuff.
Ideally, that would be great, but that's not the position we're in. But hopefully, with what you're talking about and a bit of a push towards this, general wellness in specifically in corporate, hopefully it's, a new way going forward we can improve our day-to-day wellness. I went on a bit of a round in circles there. I think you get my point.
No, I do get your point, and I think that's right. I think people are looking, because happiness and well-being is not an outcome on its own, right? So if you think about how do people really perform at a high level, well, well-being is important. But then you say when you unpack well-being, there are lots of aspects to it. Right? And the purpose of being well is that you've got enough resources to meet the challenges you've got available or you've got presented to you. Right? So the more challenges we've got, we tend to build our resources over time. But, it's like if you learn, doing a marathon, you don't just go day one and run the marathon. You build up over a number of months or weeks, depending on where you start at. And that's really about building your resilience through a kind of structured process. But if you unpack well-being, you start to think about things like, well, what are the relationships people have at work and outside of work? But, generally there is a work focus, and are they having strong relationships? Are leaders having good relationships with their people, or are they just very transactional? If they're transactional, then you're going to get Monday-itis and stuff like that. And then I think, what do people come to work with a certain level of vitality? So are they looking after themselves in a way that's going to give them energy and sustain them through what can be some pretty tough, long days. Right. And they don't need to be, at the elite athlete level kind of nutrition or fitness, but there is something about it because people work kind of 40, 50, 60 plus hours and they need to be prepared for that, right? And then I think, the one, and you and I spoke this about the concept of purpose and having a purpose. And then I think one of the things that really is causing people a lot of grief at the moment is this concept of purpose, because it's been built out to be, my purpose has got to be that I'm going to find...
Eradicating world hunger.
Oh, yeah, right. World peace.
Yeah.
Or even worse, I think it will, is I'm going to identify the next unicorn, and I'm going to retire, and I'm going to have, someone's going to buy it out for $1 billion.
Yeah.
And if I can't do that, then there must be something wrong with me.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of that going on. Or if I'm not, substantially promoted in the next 2 years, starting as a grad, then there must be something wrong with me.
Yeah.
Or I'm in the wrong company.
Yeah.
But I think a combination of those things really throws people out, and understanding that a little bit, and understanding themselves a little bit in that realm.
Yeah, well, for the people listening, and Jack made mention of the conversation we had, it was around the fact, because I was telling you that one of my friends had come to me. He was having a tough run, and he said that he'd been reading all these books on life and self-development and so forth, and one of the things was, I have no purpose, I can't find my purpose. And my point, I guess, was that he's probably looking at it in the way that you're talking about. He's looking at like, oh my God, am I going to be able to walk on water? And
That's right.
So, and that, I think we can't sell that, because there's a lot of people in this life that aren't given things on a silver platter.
That's right.
And a lot of people come up through culture and society where they're up against pretty much everything, and we got to have a way for those people to be happy. But I liked what you said, which is building a realistic purpose, and it doesn't have to be something that's
That's
otherworldly
right.
and gonna be a crazy But so I think there's a real need to find purpose, but there's a real need to not sell it the Instagram way, the YouTube way, where it's just the 15 minutes of the 15-second clips of your celebrities and
That's right.
incredible entrepreneurs and sports people.
15 minutes of fame.
Yeah, that's
spread
right.
out over a bunch of 15-second insert. And whether you're not really, is that really creating a purpose anyway? It would be, I kind of think about the old. If I think about I was going to say the old days, but if I think about my parents and that, I mean, purpose was quite simple for them, which was, my parents emigrated after the Second World War to Australia from Europe.
Yep. Whereabouts? Because I was going to ask that.
So they came from the Netherlands.
Yeah, thought so. Yeah.
And they really came with not much, because they didn't really have much. And my dad's first goal was, I'm going to make enough money to live and buy a house, and then he started a business, and then his goal was going to be, they were digging drains by hand back in the 1950s.
Yep.
And then I'm going to buy a machine, and then he ended up with quite a large business that was quite sustainable and employed quite a few people, but he never started with that.
Yeah.
Like, he didn't go, my purpose is I'm going to build, this relatively from zero to a large organisation. I'm going to
put a roof over my
head. Yeah, that's right. And there's a book, Peak Performance, which talks a lot about that, the science of peak performance, which is sometimes people are looking for purpose and passion nowadays, but some of the science around it is actually, if you do something, you find out whether it connects with you and you gain interest in it.
Yep.
And that way, over time, people actually build purpose, because they get more and more invested in it, and they get more interested in it, and then I go, and I want to read the 7 books on it, and I want to do this, and I want to do that, and I want to go to the seminar, and before you know it, I want to start talking to people about it, and then you generally create a much bigger incentive for yourself to get better at it and get that real, I guess, passion and purpose for something.
Drive
and there's a lot of examples of that, but most of us don't. I mean, even Amazon, if you look at those early days of Amazon there, of the desk.
Yeah, with the Amazon scribbled in
that's right.
Crayola and post in the background.
Jeff Bezos had a view, but did he think he was going to get to where he is today?
Yeah.
Hard to know.
Yeah, no, that's right. Well, he just wanted to sell a shitload of books and make a bunch of money, I reckon.
That's right.
There's much purpose there.
So there's something in this internet thing, and I'm going to find out what it is.
Yeah.
But and over time it just keeps morphing.
Yeah, no, that's right. So I want to talk to you about... Excuse me, I can't stop clearing my throat. I want to talk to you about leadership because Yeah, the reason why I'm really passionate about it, I'll talk to you about, my reasoning behind it. So I'm the CEO and co-founder and CEO of Athena, so I'm obviously sit at the top, and
Yep.
and the way that a fish rots from the head, and the converse of that is, I don't know, but you want to, whatever happens at the top is gonna filter through. So
Yep.
I think my day to day really actually does affect the people that work in the team, and we have 12 people now.
Yeah.
So for me, I spoke to Drew and Mads the other day. I spoke to Drew and Mads, my partners around Athena, and I said, one of the things that we talked about brand, why, and impact. And I said, we spent about an hour on it, and I led this discussion. And I said, look, one of the things that I want us to really have a crack at and draw a line in the sand is we can't really control if we're going to be the most successful company in our field. If we're going to be huge, a billion-dollar company, wildly successful financially. What we do have really great control over is trying to become the greatest place on the planet to work.
Yep.
Provide the greatest lifestyle to our people and to ourselves.
Yep.
And that's what I really want to try and do. And I feel like that'll be a better legacy than if we were to sell for $10 billion, because I don't care about that. I care that people undersell the amazing feeling that you get from helping others and making other people happy. But I don't undersell it. I live and die by it, because I had that with my past company, and that's what kept me going. But so I'm obsessed with it. But so for you, when you talk about leadership and the things that you've learned and how to be a good leader in a corporate environment or any environment, like, you can start anywhere, because this is a very broad question, but how do you become a good leader? What is great leadership? What's
the kind of essentials of a good leader?
Yeah.
There's there are lots of, you could start almost anywhere, I think. What I think one of the great strengths is one, understanding your people.
Yeah.
And for me, looking at the potential of the people, not what they are today or who they think they are today, but where they could go. And any time I've sat with a team, I've really listened to people and looked at, that's where you've got all these things, where could you go? And then on top of that, I always do have a view about where could we go? So where could we take this? And there's a great book, The Leadership Challenge, and it's got 5 kind of elements, and one of the key elements to me in that is, presenting a view or a vision to your people. And that's really just a storytelling. I'm talking about stories, but it's really storytelling to your people about where we are today and where we want to be. So what are the key aspects and who we are, and that kind of creates the culture. But I think for me, understanding efforts, I think too many leaders come in transactionally and go, we got all these things to deliver, and Bill, this is your KPI, and Mary, this is your KPI, and Fred, that's your KPI, and I'm going to come back in 6 months' time and make sure you've got them. So off you go. And where's the kind of support and engagement, and where is that? And I think you always got to back your people on that. And then KPIs are not a vision. It's a metric. And you need the metrics.
I hate KPIs.
Well, you need some metrics, because you just kind of keep wanting to know, how do we stretch ourselves and where do we want to go? The question is, are they, if you don't get them, what does that really mean?
And what if you set them low?
Well, if you set them low, then everyone's just going to hang around. And
this is why that's 2 of the reasons I'm not.
I've hardly ever seen anyone set them too low. Because we got, it's the Tony Robbins thing about, most people overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what they can do in 5. That's how KPIs are set too. They go, okay, we've got a 5-year plan. And if you look at most people's rolled out 5-year plan, this goes for big corporates often as well, there is so much stacked in the first 2 years. You go, well, that's never going to get done. And a lot of people know that's not going to get done, because it's just, there's too many bottlenecks to get it done. But if you think about what you could do over 5, and you keep pushing that through and kind of relentlessly pursuing that, I think that's a really important element. I've hardly ever seen anyone underset their KPIs.
Well, for sure. You don't, but you don't want to. But I mean, I just don't like arbitrary numbers, and I think a lot of the time KPIs are somewhat arbitrary. But I don't know much about business also, so let's just get that.
I think you're understating your.
Yeah, cool. And then so from a leadership perspective, so for us it's interesting. So I'm just going to continue to pull it back and talk from what I know, which is the companies that I've built and worked in, and a lot of one of the things that I dislike about us as a company is we have 12 people and I love them all, and I work by myself all day every day.
Yep.
So morale for me, I'm pretty self-motivating and so forth, but in this day and age in the world we live in, with Athena, we don't need to build an Australian-based team. We can be as big as we want and have everyone fully virtual. I totally believe that. We're growing really, really fast.
Yep.
12 people in 10 different cities.
Yep.
But I want a team around me just so I can hang out with people.
Yeah,
Genuine.
Well, this is the relationship thing, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And you identified before that relationships are important to you.
Yeah, that's right, 100%. And because I said to someone last night, people at the Commons are where I used to work. I work from here now, this office here. I'll probably go back to a co-work. But, I just sit on my laptop and have my headphones in, and people wouldn't think that I've got a thriving team around me and so forth, but I do. But I don't get to spend time with them. So I often feel a little isolated in the Commons, even though I'm filled with a room of 300 people at all times. But getting often across for our team is quite challenging. So anytime we have an online meeting, I'll often start on time and then let it play out for a little while just to get a bit extra, banter in across the board and so forth, because we don't have that in line. But online or offline or whatever the team may be, how do you think creating that culture is best? What are the key elements to creating a culture where people are happy at work and people want to come in and they've got morale and camaraderie and all that good stuff that you want?
I think, if you think about your comment, you said you'd like Athena to be a good place to work.
Yeah.
People want to work there. Mm-hmm. So then if you thought about that, what are the elements to making that happen? So what would that look like to you?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, I'm asking you.
One of the things is trust.
Yep.
So making our teammates feel like we trust them, which leads into autonomy.
Yep.
I think people don't like people looking over their shoulders. They like feeling like they're achieving their work on their own and they've got, the elements to put their stamp on things. Empathy from those above them.
Yeah.
I think one of the only...
And towards each other.
Yep. One of the things that I didn't know that I'm good at, but if there are things leadership-wise I'm good at, empathy is definitely one of them. I'm quite empathetic. Too much so in the real world, I think. I'm highly emotional to other people's feelings.
Yep.
I keep making this about me, but anyway. Obviously vision and why I think is important. When we onboard somebody, the first thing that we talk about is we do a brand discovery call and we talk about the whole story of why we came up with why is our hashtag Give Back Life and what does that mean? Why do we actually exist?
What's that mean?
I mean, we exist to make money, but there's lots of ways to make money.
Yeah,
and
that's
I
right.
want to make money making a good impact. So we try and make sure that people are bought into the vision. What I try and do is, I don't know if this is how I would explain it, but we have a fortnightly meeting, which is I suppose is good for buy-in. So I take people through a full rundown of our finances, our goals. We do goals, announcements, and projects, but we take them through the full finances so they're tied into our how we're going and so forth. And it also is getting everyone a lot more financially literate.
Yep. That's a good thing.
Don't know. So
So you got trust, accountability, empathy. Autonomy. Sorry.
Yeah.
Empathy, vision. But
this is all just stuff that's coming to mind. But
but if you think about that, so some of these things are actions, right? So getting buy-in, etc., are just activities. Mm-hmm. They don't necessarily create the good place to work. They are part of the tools that you're using. But I think you've got, the vision, empathy, autonomy, trust, and probably autonomy needs empowerment.
Yes.
Is the kind of thing there. People need to feel empowered to have autonomy, because I've seen people given autonomy but no empowerment, and that makes it quite difficult, because you need to know where the boundaries are. And
so an example of that would be, hey, Jack, I'm going to go and let you create this project. It's all yours. Have a great day. And then constantly being looked over the shoulder and this is not right. Why did you do this?
Or you come back in 3 months and you go, well, that's not exactly what I wanted.
Yeah.
Because you haven't defined some of the boundaries.
Yes.
To empower them.
Yeah.
Because you need to have those points where, I need to go see Bill about this bit, but I've got all this bit. So that's, I need some decisions. So Bill, I've got these 3 options, and so that type of discussion.
Yeah.
But knowing when to have that. And then I think the other one that I think is important to you, which you haven't necessarily built in there specifically, is, engagement and relationship. Right. So I think you want your team to be engaged and relate to each other, is what I kind of hear. Now, the reason I asked you that question is not to avoid answering the original question.
No, that's all right.
Was to say that list is probably pretty similar to most teams.
Oh, that's good.
Because if you think about
I was just making it up as I go.
Yeah, no. But if you think about what
I'm under the pump here.
If you think about
saying all these words I've read in books, trust, autonomy,
empower, passion,
this is all bullshit.
Accountability. That's right. No. But you think about if you thought about places that you worked that were great, you had you had high trust between peers and colleagues and your leaders. Your leaders probably had a high level of empathy, and it would be bounded though in terms of, well, we're still here to perform. Yeah. Right. So we're not. But if there's really a situation, is that leader going to back you? Like, so you've had something's happened, and they really need to give you some time, and so those types of things, and then good empowerment. But also, we're driving towards something. Yeah. I think you need to give people driving towards something to make them more engaged than they are today. Because otherwise the risk is they just do the intro. Because that's the stuff that's really important. It's like the old Steve Covey thing around, urgent and important. Well, I'll do what's urgent. Yeah. But that may actually not be the most important thing. Because they're not urgent, but important. Obviously, generally, we just keep leaving behind. Yeah. But you want to give people a bit of a view of that, and the only people that can give vision are the leaders. Now, they're not the only people that create it, because when you've got a team that starts bonding and gelling, you've got to then start listening, because there are going to be people who've got really great ideas about it. Yeah, 100%. And you go, oh, wow, that's awesome. We can start brain. And that's why, people do have leadership, off-sites and meet. I know you don't like meetings, but that's why they do have planning days and things, because you never know what's going to come out of that. Oh, yeah. No, and you want to get some of that insight from your own people about that. And that is about trust, and that is about empowerment and stuff like that, right? No, you're right. So if you think about putting all those things together, that's what makes great teams, right? Yeah, no, for sure. And no, I totally agree on the meeting thing. I don't like, small week to week, we meet weekly, but I really love, we call it a mastermind. Yeah. Where we sit down and we have an hour dedicated to open discussion, an hour dedicated, over the course of a day, an hour dedicated to, we did one 2 weeks ago, brand, why and vision, financial stuff for an hour, our outreach department, which is a part of the company we're really focusing on, our niche and our product. They were mainly what they were, product and retention and all that stuff. How do we make things better? Sitting down and having an hour to dive in, I love doing that. But I don't really like the meeting for meeting's sake with everybody with no real purpose, which I think can be overdone sometimes. So. I think you just have meetings with the people that need to be at meetings, and then you get them over and done with as fast as you can. Yeah, that's right. That's how you stay productive. But if you think about being in a performance mind, you have the right people in the right room for the right discussion with the right decision, and then you move on. Yeah. Not, okay, we'll kick this down the road and we'll come back next week. And I've sat in rooms where there are 20 people in the room and 3 of them are talking. Yeah. You go, well, what's everybody else? Why are you other people actually here? In corporate, you do we just wasted 20 grand. Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. You go, well, why are all you people here? Yeah. Right? Yeah, that's right. Go do some work, you dirtbag. Just to hear somebody give me a hard time. Corporate's so funny, isn't it? I've got a mate Joe.
Luckily, I would put him right in it and say his second name, but I don't know his second name. He's just Big Joey. He's about 6'4" and he lives just near me in Port Melbourne.
Right.
And he's a friend of mine. The reason his name's Big Joey is because he's a friend of my friend Joey.
Yeah.
Who's just regular sized Joey, you know? But Big Joey, I always bump into him. He's one of the nicest blokes and he's a classic. I've had a couple of beers with him over the journey, but we live right next to each other. And anyway, because it's been really nice weather the last couple of days, so I was down the park working from my laptop in the sun 3 days ago. And he rolled in from work and he was like, "Oh, you bastard! Oh, what are you work?" I'm like, "Mate, I'm just in my office. Welcome. Sit down if you'd like." And then anyway, the next day I went for a surf. I started work really early. Then I went to go for a surf, and then I saw him in the afternoon. I'm coming back with a surfboard. And he's like, "You haven't been surfing, have you?" I'm like, "Yeah." And then the next day, I was working, and he was knocking off. He'd finished work. He was riding his bike past me. I said, "What are you doing?" He goes, and this is the point about the corporate thing. He goes, "I just put a bunch of bullshit meetings in my calendar and I've just taken off for the day." So he booked in, he goes, "I'm done." He booked in 4 hours worth of meetings and just went home. Fake meetings.
Okay, so hopefully Big Joey's not identifiable to his boss at the moment.
Yeah, that's right. Well, hopefully there's a few Joes that are like, 6'4" and above and around Melbourne. Otherwise, I'm going to be getting in trouble. But
that's right. You're in trouble.
Yeah. But so...
Well, there is a lot of meeting for meeting's sake, and there's a lot of bureaucracy. So, I'm working with a lot more entrepreneurial people now than I probably have for a very long time.
Yeah.
And entrepreneurial, not that corporates don't have entrepreneurs, because I think they do. They have very, very good entrepreneurs.
Yep.
But the system works against them.
Yeah.
So despite the ideas, they then have to go through the process.
Yeah.
Whereas you're actually able to be, and people I've met along the way over the last couple of years are much more flexible.
Oh, yeah.
They've got an idea. They go, "Oh, we're just going to do that."
Yeah, yeah.
And you go, "Well, should we do some planning or risk management?" Like, what is that?
Yeah, that's right.
But they're doing it. They are doing it. So my take on this is I watch and I listen. I go, "Oh, you've done the risk management. You've just done it in your head, and you've been through a whole series of this type of thing.
Yeah.
And you've gone tick, 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 and it looks okay, and you'll also cut it off quickly." Yeah. So what happens in some settings is there's so much investment in this, people have trouble turning it off.
Yeah, that's right.
Well,
what's Zuckerberg's thing? Move fast and break things. I think he doesn't swear by that anymore, but
No, I think that's exactly right. And it's a very old, it's basic economics. Don't look at your sunk cost. Look at what the future marginal return's going to be. Yeah. If it's not positive, well, don't kill your sunk costs. Yeah, don't put more money in it. It's just going to be a bigger pit.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So there's a couple of things around, how's that music? Oh, that was just next door just pumped.
It's the ghost.
Yeah. There's a couple of things that I've been looking into that I'm just fascinated by around wellness and so forth in business. And two things that I really have only read like a small handful of articles and listened to a portion of one podcast and whatever. But the two things are 4-day work weeks, which is interesting.
Yep.
And then the other is what would you call it? Never fire you policy. So there's obviously the 4-day work week is, and I'm talking about a true 4-day work week here, like 32, maybe 34 hours, not 4 days, 10-hour days, like genuine 4-day work weeks. And the Netherlands, I believe, have this as
I think, there's a couple of, and it might even be, it's not 4 days, but I think the Danish have a very structured view of work.
Yep.
And they basically cut off at 4 o'clock or something like that.
Yeah.
And basically everybody almost, not quite, but there's not a big gap between pays.
Yep.
So it's much more, much more kind of social system.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really...
So there's no incentive to actually work 80 hours a week.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to get ahead.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. But I listened to this, what was it?
What was this, never fire
yourself? No, you'll never fire an employee.
Right.
So you know that if you put in, we'll make things work for you, and you'll always have a job here to provide for your family. So There's a couple of there's a lot of really famous examples of it.
Yeah.
But the one, and I don't know the name of the company. It was a tech company. It was the most recent example, and it was in a book I read. So I'm obviously going to paraphrase and butcher half of this. But the whole idea was, we hire people, and people are inherently good. People aren't inherently out to take the piss out of people.
No.
So if we hire somebody and they're not a perfect fit for the role, then we're a profitable company. We're good operators. Then we'll find a way to get the best out of them.
Yeah.
We're not going to set goals where, all right, cool, by the end of quarter 3, we have to have grown revenue by blah, blah, blah. And if we don't, we have to make cutbacks and whatever that is.
Yeah.
That's a shit system.
Yeah,
But the funny thing with this policy of never firing anybody again was, as soon as they announced, you guys have jobs with us for life and we will never fire anybody, that's the only thing they did. Well, I mean, obviously, that's they're probably changing a lot of different things around their business, but that metric was basically
kind of
tracked from that point. Yeah.
Yep.
So they said, we're never going to fire anybody again.
Yep.
And their revenue or their growth, growth trajectory, their speed of growth, what would you call it? Whatever.
Yep.
It grew by like 23% year on year compared to their regular growth rate.
Okay.
Something like that. This is as I said, I'm butchering the example. But it was quite fascinating to me. I was like, oh well, because some companies wouldn't be able to do that, because not every company is in a really good position where they feel very comfortable with their survivability, I guess.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's cool. But I think as a general concept, I think it's quite fascinating that people, if they are told, hey, there's no reason for you to stress, we've got you, you're part of the family here, and we'll look after you, people will actually do exceedingly well.
Yep.
And they'll do better.
Yep.
And then, I'd love to... I really want to look more into 4-day work week stuff, because I think that there's so much fluff.
Yeah.
There's even not in corporate, even just in a lean, startup and so forth. There's still because I said to Drew and Mads, I want to, once we're at, there's a certain goal that we want to get to. It's not a large goal. It's really quite around the corner, but I want to look really heavily into the 4-day work week, and I want to say to our team, look, guys, we want to try and grow at the same rate.
Yeah.
But let's just do it let's just have an extra day off per week.
Time, yeah. Well, this is there's a principle around the work expands to fit the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you have less time, if you give yourself less time, can you do the same amount of work? And generally, most of us can if we really push ourselves hard on that. And I think if you had it as a company principle, I think it's a kind of really important one. But then you would have to really set those boundaries around. That's great, but I don't want you to then catch up on Friday, or the expectation becomes you're going to catch up on Friday afternoon or Saturday morning or something about that. So that would be a very cultural change.
Yeah.
And, it wouldn't work for some people.
Yeah.
So we've got to think about, we all work differently in different cultures and different ways. And some people just can't cope with the fact that they got something that's not done.
Oh yeah, no, you're right, for sure.
They would have to, and then that starts to undermine that type of culture. I think to get ourselves thinking, could we do more in less time, is a really important one, because I see a lot of stuff. When the classic, if you go into the CBD and you go to those big buildings, people will arrive around about 8:30, 8 to 9, and then the first thing I'll do is I'll unpack their stuff and I'll come. And then I'll wander downstairs with a coffee and have it with my mates. And then I go and have a lunch with their mates. And whilst that might be half an hour, 40 minutes, whatever, then they'll say, well, I had to stay till 7 o'clock. I was like, well, maybe just have a few less coffees during the day. Or just have them at your desk. And I don't think you should eat at your desk all the time or anything like that. But I do think maybe you think about what's the trade-off between me stopping for 45 minutes to have a chat. But on the other hand, relationships are important. So, not do it 2 or 3 times a day. So I think there's a bit of that goes on in the corporate world, but there are a lot of stakeholders. So there are a lot of stakeholders that drive a lot of activity. So that drives, that kind of. But it is an interesting one. But the Danish thing is a really interesting one too, where they have changed their whole. So they're much more, social. Kind of good culture, where
it's like socialist nearly.
Yeah, that's right. So it's not. So if you're a brain surgeon, you don't earn 5 times as much as if you
A bin surgeon.
That's right. Yeah. And I'm probably butchering this example as well, right? But there is a lot in that, and they have a kind of fixed work week more view of it, and they have a lot, and their style's a lot different. But they do have a thing when you can see this at the moment with a lot of the refugee situation, where they're quite adamant they don't want, non-Danish people in the country because they're all kind of being supported, and they don't want to, so there's a kind of a reverse racism in that one. But I think it is an interesting one for that you can actually build a whole culture like that. So there is no advantage to saying, well, I'm going to work 60 hours a week compared to 40 or 38 or whatever it is, or 35. And, it is a good, interesting one for wellbeing, but I think culturally in Australia, we want to get ahead. So if you try to put something in that doesn't fit the culture, you're going to make people unwell immediately. So if you think about that, because Australians generally, we like to get ahead.
Yeah, but
our expectation is...
Isn't that a human being thing, don't you think?
I think different cultures are setting up themselves up differently, that they want to be, that they're much more about the group rather than the individual.
Yeah.
And I think if you look at it, my sense is Australia's become very much about the individual, because our extended families are probably fracturing a bit, quite a lot, I think. We're quite mobile. We're quite mobile, so we're probably not planted as much as we used to be.
Yeah.
And so that makes it really irrelevant. So if I think about my kids, if they're potentially going to spend some time over a 100-year life working overseas, what's their interest in supporting the social welfare in Australia and making sure everybody gets ahead, and so which is much more the Danish thing, where they kind of stay more home and
I feel like it is just it's what you know and what you grew up with, and I just think I just have a huge issue with, so at Athena, one of our secondary hashtags, or we have our hashtags are Give Back Life, Hard Work is for Losers, and the Anti-Hustle.
Yeah.
And it's like it's a play on, obviously.
It's
a pushback, but it's a pushback not because it's good for marketing, not that we've done much with it, but it's a pushback because I think it's rubbish, how much we agree to work 38 hours, and then we work 50 plus, and I don't mind, sorry, didn't finish my sentence. I don't mind working, No. I'm happy to work, and I think it's important that you do work, but ideally, in a utopian society, I think everyone should be working 25 hours, and everyone should be, learning that guitar that they wanted to learn, spending time visiting their grandma who they haven't seen in bloody ages.
Spending a bit more time with their kids.
Going out in nature. Yeah, that's right. So,
and that's because that's a common thing that I hear and see is people going, well, I'm really doing well at work, but I'm not doing as well on the family side.
Yeah.
And that's part of the discussions that we have it is part of the discussion. I'm realistic about it.
Yep.
Right, so you're kind of searching for a much better answer.
Yeah, I'm utopic about it.
I'm realistic, and I'm going right. Yes, right. Well, I'll just make shit up now. No, I'm realistic about it. The world's not going to change overnight.
No,
but individually we can change.
That's right.
And if we pull ourselves back a little bit and go, oh yeah, my boss is working 40 hours, not 60, and that person's getting stuff done. Yep. I'm feeling good. They're supporting me about being, leaving on time. They're allowing me. 4-day work week is much about flexibility across the week as well. So it might be 5 days, but 4 days across flex.
Yeah.
And I'm picking up and I was speaking to a lady the other day whose whole team is mothers, and they work between 10 and 3.
Yep.
And that's so the whole business revolves around that, which is kind of similar to what you... And so she's a mother, and so she specifically works with mothers in her team because they all need to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And because they all need to do the same thing, it really works. Culturally, it's a good fit for them.
Yeah.
But, it is... I'm realistic. I think the long hours are here, and it's hard to say, I'm not going to walk into BHP and say, right, you know what, I think for your well-being, you should only work 30 hours a week. Everyone should work 30 hours a week.
Yeah.
And they go, okay, well, let's talk about the next person who's going to do wellbeing for us. Anyway.
Yeah, that's right.
But I think it's a performance thing because there are shareholders. You've got a super fund.
Mm-hmm.
All those people that are working ridiculous hours, they're all supplying your super returns.
Yeah.
And so there's a whole thing in this, and
Yeah.
it's not going to change overnight. I think if we change individuals and teams, then we start spreading a different view of the world.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I came from originally in this whole game, is like, if I can touch individuals, if I can increase their longevity in their career, but then they get passed that on to their teams.
Yeah, that's right.
And then does that kind of is a small change over time?
Yeah, well, that's how things change.
Yeah, that's right.
That's why when I spoke to Drill Mads, I said I want us to be an example of how work should be done.
Yeah, that's a great thing to do.
And that's, and because, I want...
Isn't that kind of your thing here?
Vision.
Vision, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly what our vision is. Because we can't control being the biggest company in the world. We can control being PR worthy on how we do business.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And that's because at the end of the day, politicians and governments and so forth, like, businesses change the world, Oh,
yeah, politicians don't change the world.
They do.
No, they don't.
No, they don't.
Have a look at the Brexit thing.
Yeah.
They're all voting to not vote, basically. How can we not vote?
Yeah. But I mean, but people can, and through business can, change how we do things. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Like, everything's entrenched, fully entrenched.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of companies that will continue to come through that are trying to do things differently, and we're not breaking the wheel and turning things upside down and turning them on their heads. We're just trying to be somewhat realistic with a look to the future, and we haven't done it yet. We haven't done a lot of the stuff we're planning. The 4-day work week might not work, whatever. But I think we have control. If we're to do anything PR worthy, we might do PR worthy revenue. Who knows? Can't. But we can really drive towards creating, the lifestyle that we want to live as the directors, and then our team, as well.
Well, and I think it's and every company needs to have a few things that they're trying to stretch on.
Yeah.
And I think that there is that bit, and I've seen that happen time and time again. People ask for extensions of projects or whatever, and then invariably the project takes that extension time.
Yeah.
It's not because we've now got that time. Right?
There's a law, and I always forget what
I forget what the law's called. But
it's the law of living within your means. It works with time, it works with money, it works with whatever. Have you read Profit First by Mike Michalowicz?
No.
It's just about paying yourself first. So if you want to be 10% profitable in the month, put that 10% in your bank account, and everything else will work itself out.
Yeah.
And that's because you will live within your own means.
That's right.
And with Adventure Fit, my previous company, we were like, we'd make every trip that we ran, we would have $1 in the bank account at the end. And I used to always think to myself, wow, this is so coincidental that every single time, but it is truly a perfect example of living within your means.
Yeah.
And so I think the same is applied to time. So, but yeah, cool. So, well, let's talk about this wellness stuff, Jack. So, So this wellness program that you're creating, so is this for leaders? Is it for genuine? Is it for anybody?
It's targeted at leaders, really, and the reason for that is because it could probably be applied to anyone, but to be honest, I target at leaders, and the reason for that is, not at any scale, just people who lead. And the reason for that is I kind of felt like one of the sweet spots for me was I understand leadership and I understand the wellness and well-being thing.
Yeah.
And I thought change could come from the leadership.
Yeah.
All right. So that was I am trying to get a bigger change.
Yeah.
But let's get the leaders sorted out, because they will then, if they find something good, they'll pass it through their people. 100%. And as you said, there's a lot of role modelling from the bottom upwards.
Yep.
So what they see is what they role model. And so I keep tinkering with how this will work, but effectively, because I've kind of run it as a full day program and I've run it as a short workshop plus some webinars, and so we'll keep tinkering to get the offering right for people.
Yeah, but even aside from the offering, what is wellness
what's involved?
To you?
So well-being for me is we focus on purpose, mindset, because I think mindset's really important. So how you talk to yourself, how you talk to other people, how you view what's important to you, and I think that's a really important one. And then I put really wellness as a subset there, and then unpacking wellness, we talk about nutrition, and nutrition specifically for people that are knowledge workers.
Yeah.
So, I think I've done a lot of research around how do I get my brain working better during the day.
Oh, right.
And what food do I eat? When do I eat it?
Acuity.
Yeah. So that's getting that real mental sharpness. So done a lot around that, and we kind of share a lot of that. And like most things, it's not rocket science, because there's only one thing that's rocket science. Rocket science. And but that, and so movement. So getting some movement in, and it doesn't have to be you and I do probably a fair bit, but doesn't have to be to that level.
We're elite athletes.
Yeah, right up there. Well, I just feel like
you can just come out and say it, mate.
I feel like I'm at the gym all the time. My wife keeps going, "Are you at the gym again?" It's like, "Oh no, well, I've got the comp coming up, and it's really important." And so movement, sleep. I think sleep's a really important one. The first time I ever looked up how do I boost my immune system?
Yeah.
Everything, I was looking for the magic pill. Yeah. I was like everyone. And I was Googling, and all that ever came up was sleep studies.
Yeah.
And so eventually I went into Harvard Medical and read all their studies. And I was like, so basically the best way to fix your immune system is to sleep.
Yeah.
And so I went through that. So sleep, I think, is a really critical one. And
humongous.
And leaders are notoriously bad at it.
Yeah.
Because they're under pressure, so they have trouble switching off, and kind of work with that a little bit to talk about bit about circadian rhythms around how that affects your sleep, but also how the time you go to bed, or the moment you go to bed, affects how your next day's performance is going to be. So it's not when you wake up; it's kind of the actual process of going to bed affects your next day's performance, and the day after and the day after. So there's a lot of, because it takes quite a few days to recover from a poor sleep cycle.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we talk about sleep and habits. So I'm really big on habits, because one of the big things is it's hard to, so you can know everything. In fact, most people probably know everything there is to know about a lot of these topics.
Yeah.
But putting it into practice.
Yeah.
And so I've been deep diving a lot into habits and how to help people track their habits and build new habits, and what that's all about, and some of the mental game around habits.
Yeah.
And, like most things, I researched that on myself and broke a few habits and built some new ones. So that's been good. But that's kind of the things we cover. And when I say it's a kind of a leadership view, because the mindset is all about the leadership mindset, and then purpose is all about, so why are we doing what we're doing? Because without purpose, I still believe, and purpose could be meaning, but meaning's got its own kind of connotations to it. But if without meaning, why do we do anything?
Yeah.
Right, so we don't do anything without meaning.
Oh, it's the biggest question in life, really, isn't it?
That's right. Well,
what is this all about?
Yeah. So you see how grand. See, this is the problem. Meanings are kind of. See, that's it. Meaning's a loaded question, or loaded word. So you've gone straight to
the highest version.
Yeah, that's right. I just meant was,
I've gone to what is the meaning of life?
That's right. See, and could simply be, I just don't want to feel tired at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And a lot of people talk to me about that and say, well, one of the problems I have is I've done great at work, but I get home, I haven't got any energy left for my family. And how do I blend the two together?
Yeah.
And some of that's about working less, but some of it's also about, working smarter, which is mindset. And then, the mindset around working long hours versus shorter hours. And then also about just how do you fuel yourself? Because there's a classic of... I fuel myself with coffee and caffeine and, whatever, Red Bull. And then I'm so wired, just to get through the day, because I haven't really fueled myself cleanly. Yeah. And then, so at the end of the day, I need a couple of drinks to wind back down. Yeah. And then we know alcohol kicks in kind of in the middle of the night and wakes you back up. Ruins your sleep. So, but that is actually I think that's a lot of people do experience that kind of thing where they have the couple of drinks to wind down to get over some of the other stuff. And then, but it's got its own problems attached to it.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
It's not a healthy thing. Alcohol is a poison.
So as soon as somebody says, I need a drink to wind down, you go, well, okay, well, what is that? Yeah. So what's the cause of that? Why is that? And there's something else. And sometimes people may actually have, more deep-seated issues, which I don't.
You're not a psychologist.
I don't know. I'm just dealing with healthy people that want to do better.
And
be at their peak. That's what we want to do, and we want to try and get that spread out through the community.
So let me just ask you, in the interest of time, because you listed probably 8 elements.
A bunch of things.
A bunch of things there. If you were to pick 2 or 3 that are most exciting, you like, or top 2, whatever. Like for me, sleep is one of them. I try and give myself 8 hours, 15 of sleep opportunity. Can't always guarantee when I'm going to sleep. But I try, and I've always been on the side of like 7 to 7.5 hours. Probably 7 hours. Probably been my average for the last 5-10 years. But now I try and give myself 8 and a quarter hours, and it's crazy the difference you feel recovery wise.
Oh, it makes a huge difference.
100%. So that's a massive one for me. But like out of everything you mentioned, like what is a bit of a deep dive in some stuff that you've been doing personally with yourself, or stuff that's got you the most fired up?
The 2 things that really I think made the biggest, sleep definitely made a difference, but I think the 2 things that made the biggest difference was mindset and getting my mindset right and getting my self-talk under control.
So give us an example of that. Like what? Are you a negative self-talker, or you're in the past? Or
it definitely can be. And an example for me was even yesterday I was talking to Alex at the gym because I was doing the squats, and I was saying, it's just amazing. A couple of months ago, I just did over 100 kilos for the first time, which in our gym's not a very big amount, but anyway. For me personally,
these people listening don't know, Jack.
Don't know kilos. They don't know the difference. But no, I go and mentally that was a mindset for me was 100. Oh my God, 100 kilos is a lot. I'm not sure I'll get back up. And I had that ticking in my head for months. And now and yesterday, I was basically warming up and that kind of 100 kilos mark to get ready for my peaking for the comp. And so Alex dragged me out to 110. And there's still, that was going to, still more left. But my mind, I was talking to Alex about, it's amazing how your mindset, because I did a whole movie rewind on my fear of this and reinterpreted it and then said, and that became my, added new resources to that about my skill level and understanding, and then changed. So changed my mindset.
All right. Okay. So when you say you did a movie rewind and you added more resources, dive into that a little bit, because I don't know what you mean by that.
Okay. So most of us, I think, we'll talk to ourselves and we'll either play a movie or a soundtrack around what that looks like. So some of our biggest fears, if you think about some things that you may fear or get worried about, and you close your eyes and you thought about it, you probably see some picture come up in your mind, or a movie.
Oh, look, I get
or a feeling, right? So it might be a soundtrack, because it depends if you're visual or oral. Oral. And so then thinking about that, and I could detail that, and I'm a very visual person. But I also know I've got a whole lot of resources around resilience, about overcoming and my ability to actually, and my confidence in myself to overcome things. So I can build that up as an emotion. And while I'm rewinding that movie and saying, well, I'm no longer the person who's scared of this, I can add that positive emotion to it. And suddenly I no longer, it's almost like a phobia cure, right? And you're basically now no longer concerned about. And you
just call back on your memory and you build in times like, okay, cool, I'm worried about this, but I remember a time when I was able to actually X, Y, and Z, and then also I did this and I was really positive.
And create the emotion. So it's about emotion, because I think most of the stuff we do is based on emotion. So we build those emotions up, and then the ability to do that, and then I probably did that I would say I didn't do that once. I probably might have done it 100 times
Yeah, right.
over a period of time. And
Yep.
just before I was doing the squats, and now I don't worry about it anymore.
Yeah.
It's just a program. So I've reprogrammed myself from being afraid to, excited about it.
Jack Leeuw, the self-reprogram. That's cool.
So that's a skill. So that's kind of what we.
That's good.
So that's why mindset's important. And the other thing about mindset is I was really deeply into meditation for a long time because I really needed just to clean out. I think a whole lot of stuff, and I think one of the best ways to do that is meditate through. And it's not a kind of spiritual thing or anything like that, but it's just very much around just clearing the decks. And having more availability. It's like cleaning your wardrobe. If you clean your wardrobe out, suddenly you got availability to get stuff that you really want.
Space for new ideas and thoughts.
That's right, and it's the same thing. So I think those things, and meditation's not for everyone, but there are different ways to achieve the same thing. And the nutrition side. So I really work on the nutrition side on myself. And, I started thinking through and reading about, like a standard diet is not the appropriate standard diet. And particularly if you're trying to initiate your brain. And there are much better ways to feed your body. I've heard you talk about the butter coffee.
Like keto diet.
Bulletproof coffee. And I don't do that all the time, but I know if I did it, if I've got something really important on, like this morning, Bill.
You got a meeting after this, haven't you?
I have the bulletproof coffee, and so I'm lucky because I've got the espresso machine at home and make it up but I think that does make a difference, and even things like intermittent fasting makes your brain, I think, a lot sharper.
I heard really good results from intermittent fasting.
So if you do that properly, so there's a process around that, but if you do it well, I think that sharpens your brain a whole lot better than pretty much anything else you can do.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Interesting. All right, cool. Well, I think that's nearly a wrap, I reckon, Jack. So,
okay,
mate. Is there anything that you wanted to add? We'll throw to where can people find you and stuff. But is there anything? Where would you like to see? One thing I probably should finish with, I guess, is where would you like to see yourself with all this in 5 or 10 years?
5 or 10 years?
2 years, whatever.
Look, what I would like to see is just a community of leaders that are really interested in well-being. Not from a kind of tick-the-box perspective, and not from a well-being for the sake of well-being, but well-being leveraged into performance.
Yeah, cool.
And I think that could change a lot of dynamics in businesses and in the community, and that's what I'd like to see. And if we could, slowly pull a community together like that just wants to keep advancing that'd be a really, be kind of the optimal outcome.
Absolutely, that'd be great. And I'm glad somebody's working on it. All right, Jack. Well, lastly, where can people find you? So any information about, if they want to get in contact or anything that you want to plug, go for it.
My website's jackdeluw.com. So it's easy to find.
Yep. That's Leeuw. Really easy to find. Yep.
And that is probably the best. And I'm on LinkedIn, and I post quite a lot of articles on LinkedIn about well-being and mindset and leadership.
Cool. No worries. Well, Jack, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap.